Hi dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I have another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are going to be talking about Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This was the first book that I read by Celeste. It's her second book. The first one came out in 2014, and when I finished this one last night, I immediately ordered the other one. So that should give you a bit of insight as to how I felt about this one. When I picked up Little Fires Everywhere, what originally had hooked me was I was sort of just browsing around Amazon, you know, as you do, and I saw this blurb. It was on the website, and it was given by Joe Hill, who is one of my favorite authors, and it said this. It said, "As I read Celeste Ng's second novel, I found myself thinking again and again, how does she know so much about all of us? Little Fires Everywhere has the irresistible pace of an expertly tuned thriller and the observational brilliance of lasting literature." And when I read that, I was like, that's such glowing praise. I was so intrigued. So that night I ordered it, it came, and I read it in about 2 sittings. It was so good. So let me tell you a bit about it. I don't know how much I will be able to get into because, you know, I try to keep these videos at a reasonable length, and there are so many layers to this book. You peel away a layer and there's another one there. So we'll see how far we get with this. So this story takes place in the 1990s, late 90s, in a town called Shaker Heights, Ohio. It's a suburb of Cleveland, I believe. And right off the bat, we meet the Richardson family, and their house is currently burning down. The mom is out on the lawn, Mrs. Richardson. 3 of her 4 children are across the street, sitting on the top of the eldest daughter's car, and they're just sort of watching it burn to the ground. And they're talking about a 4th sibling who's nowhere to be found at this point. So that's where we start. And you're just kind of like, how did we get here? How are we here? And then Celeste, of course, takes us back in time a little ways, not too far, just a little bit, to let us know what led up to this happening. So first of all, here's the thing about Shaker Heights. It was I believe it was the first planned town in America. And it even has like a catchphrase like, some cities just happen, the best ones are planned, or something similar to that. And that sort of logo is really embodied by the residents of the town. Like, everything is just so, even like down to the point where you have to paint your houses a certain color depending on the style of houses. Like, everything is uniform, everything is perfect. And, you know, from the outside looking in, so are the lives that are being lived inside of those houses in this town. So, the Richardsons, let's meet them real quick. So there's the mom, Mrs. Richardson, Elena. She's, you know, beautiful. She lives a wonderful life. She's a reporter for the local newspaper. There's Mr. Richardson. He's a lawyer. And then the 4 kids, there's Lexi. And the kids all are kind of stereotypical kids from a rich neighborhood. You know, there's Lexi. She's beautiful, and she's, you know, the star of the school play. She's popular. And then there's Trip, and he's handsome and kind of shallow and star athlete. And then there's Moody, who's kind of the younger brother. And he's just kind of trying to find his way in the shadow of this superstar brother. And then there's Izzy, who's kind of the wild card, the black sheep of the family, and who right from the get-go is being blamed for the house being burned down. In fact, even the first line here in the story is, everyone in Shaker Heights was talking about it that summer, how Isabel, the last of the Richardson children, had finally gone around the bend and burned the house down. So that's the first line, like that. Right from that get-go, I was hooked. So, those are the Richardson children. And there's another family that is very important to this story. And it's just a mom and a daughter. The mom's name is Mia. And the daughter's name is Pearl. And these two, the mom's an artist. She's, you know, a free spirit, a bit of a nomad, a bit of a gypsy. They move around from town to town wherever Mia kind of feels inspired to go to create her art. And they roll into town, and the Richardsons have a rental house in a different neighborhood in town that Mrs. Richardson inherited from her parents. And Mrs. Richardson kind of likes to fancy herself a bit charitable, and they don't need the money from this rental, so she prefers to rent it out to people who are really in need so she can help them and sort of feel good about that. So she meets Mia and Pearl and immediately thinks they are the perfect candidates for this house, and they move in, and then we meet them. And immediately Moody gets a little curious about the girl his age that has moved into their rental property. So one day he just bikes on over there and he introduces himself, and they become best friends right away. Pearl starts hanging out with the Richardsons, spending a lot of time in their home, getting to know them. And as it rolls on, we can see that Moody is really starting to develop feelings for Pearl, but Pearl has kind of shifted her attention a bit, and she's a little more fascinated with the older brother, Trip. So, kind of while all this is happening, it's set against a situation that begins to sort of tear the town apart. Family friends of the Richardsons, the McCulloughs, have been trying to have a baby their whole adult lives with no success. Mrs. McCullough would get pregnant, and then she would have a miscarriage, and there was no way that they could conceive their own child. So they put themselves on all the lists for all the adoption agencies, but kind of because of their age, because, you know, they're probably in their late 30s at this point, maybe even early 40s, because they tried for so long on their own, they feel as though sort of priority is being given to younger couples. But then one day, a baby is found abandoned at the fire station, and the McCulloughs are called up, and they're like, we have this baby for you. Do you want her? And they, of course, are over the moon, excited, in love with this child. And they take her and they start raising her, and they're just, their lives now feel complete. But about a year or so later, the woman, the birth mother, whose name is Bibi, who was the one who had abandoned the child, now feels like she's got her life together more, and, you know, she's got a more steady job, and she wants her baby back. And so this long, sort of drawn out trial begins, where, you know, they go to court and they try to, the McCulloughs want to keep this child because they've been loving her and raising her as though she was their own for the past year, and Bibi wants the baby back, and it becomes this really nasty battle that sort of pulls the town apart. And Mr. Richardson, he becomes the lawyer for the family. And Mrs. Richardson, she, is offering support to her friend. And she's trying to help find any information that could just be more damning to Bibi, that sort of puts her in light of being even more of an unfit mother than the fact that she abandoned her child in a fire station. So meanwhile, with Mia, we find out that Mia knows Bibi, that they work together at a restaurant, and Mia sort of publicly comes out as on the side of Bibi, and that the biological mother should have her child back, whereas the Richardsons, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson at least, really feel that the baby should be left where she is. And so that is kind of like the whole town has feelings and opinions on it. It's being covered in the news every day. It's just this like scandal, and it's truly heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking on both sides. You feel for this woman, Bibi, who, did what she thought was best at the time and has changed her mind, but it's like, I don't know. It's so, you feel for her, but at the same time, you're like, but this child has a home and she's happy and she's settled. So, and like at the time when Bibi abandoned the baby, she was like 2 months old. So, it's not as though the child really has any memories of her or anything like that. So it's real conflicting, and it's really difficult to know what to feel. And so from there, we're waiting to see what's going to happen with this baby. And then there's so much going on within these two families, Mia and Pearl, and then the Richardsons. There's so much we learn about Mia's history, which is absolutely fascinating, and who she is, and who Pearl is, and where Pearl came from, why Mia feels the way she does about Bibi, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story about motherhood. At its core, that's what this is a story about. It's about motherhood and the things it makes you do and the ways it makes you feel. There's this one bit from the book that is from Mia's perspective, and she's talking about kind of how it feels as a mother and why she sort of sympathizes so much with Bibi. And it says this, it says, to a parent, your child wasn't just a person. Your child was a place, a kind of Narnia, a vast eternal place where the present you were living and the past you remembered and the future you longed for all existed at once. The other passage I can't find, but it was something to the effect of how difficult it is as mothers to go from, constantly holding your baby and being physically close to your baby and your young child, always touching them and hugging them and holding them. And then as they grow and become teenagers and adults, it's natural for them to, move away from that, of course, because they're growing up. But then the mother is still the mother, and you still feel the same way about that child, and how difficult it is to no longer have that contact the way you do with a baby. And it struck me as so beautiful, as just such a beautiful, sad sentiment as well. So I'm not going to get into any spoilers with this book because, first of all, this video would end up having to be like an hour and a half long. And I know that's too long. But if I could, I would highly, highly recommend picking up this book. It's absolutely amazing. The writing is beautiful. The story is so intriguing. Like I said, so many layers, so many stories, so many intertwined relationships between these people that I've told you about, that I think if you love books about families, about motherhood, about, you know, family conflict, I think you'll love it. And if you do read this, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you've already read it, I would love to know what you thought of it. I actually just saw today that it's going to be made into a TV show starring Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington, so that will be interesting. From what I was reading, Reese Witherspoon will be playing the Mrs. Richardson part, and then Kerry Washington will be playing Mia. I can't wait to see it come to life. So, yeah. There you go, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this book talk. Like I said at the beginning, I've ordered Celeste's first book. I can't wait to read it. So I'm sure once I do, I'll put up another book talk on that one as well. So thank you, you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.